Back in 2021, my partner Chad and I started looking for our first home. After years of renting in London, we'd reached that point where we wanted something that actually felt like ours. Somewhere we could paint the walls, hang our pictures, and finally make our own. We spent months scrolling through listings late at night, traipsing around open houses at the weekend, and convincing ourselves that the next one might just be the one. But if you've ever tried to buy in London, you'll know that it's not for the faint-hearted. Every viewing felt like a race, every offer a gamble, and we slowly started to accept that maybe what we wanted just didn't exist. Then, one day, we came across a little Victorian terrace tucked away on a quiet street. They say you just know when you found the right house, but this wasn't one of those moments. Most of the original charm had long disappeared. The rooms were small, the wallpaper was questionable, and there was a faint smell of damp to really seal the deal. But there was something about it. The high ceilings, the crooked doorways, the soft light that fell across the floorboards. It felt like a house with a story to tell. So, against all odds, we placed an offer, and a month later we had the keys. What followed was 4 years of dust, discoveries, disasters, and countless tins of paint. This is the story of how we turned a tired little Victorian terrace into a home we truly love.
Hi, I'm Ash and welcome to my home.
Our house is a classic Victorian terraced house, and most have the exact same layout, so let me show you what it looked like when we bought it. As soon as you stepped into the house, you were greeted by a stark blank hallway with a horrific view of the stairs, and separating the stairs from the dining room was this faux wooden wall. As you came around the corner of the hallway, you were then met with a blank white room. The people living here before us used it as their open-plan dining and sitting room. It was at this point we knew that at some stage one of the previous owners had ripped out so many of the original features. This house was built in the late Victorian era, supposedly over 120 years ago, so there should have been fireplaces, cornice, corbels, but it had sadly all been ripped out. The last room downstairs was the kitchen. Attached to it was a conservatory, and past that a small, fully concrete tiled back garden. Once you made your way upstairs, there were 3 rooms. The first, as you get to the top of the stairs, was the bathroom, which actually was being used as a bedroom with an ensuite, which strangely was the only bathroom in the house, and as you can see, it wasn't in a good state. The fixtures were falling off the walls, the boiler was completely broken, and the absence of a loving homeowner was very obvious. Once out of the bathroom, you made your way up to a small set of stairs to the guest bedroom, a relatively small room, again with no original features, broken single-pane windows and destroyed floorboards. And then onto the final room, the master bedroom, a generously sized room, but again in a very bad state. Dated wallpaper, uneven broken floorboards, and windows that were practically falling out. And of course, no original features in sight. And believe it or not, that was the house that we thought had potential. At the time of buying it, Chad and I were living in a flat just outside of Canary Wharf, a place called City Island, a private island with penthouse apartments, gyms, swimming pools, private cinemas, and most importantly, views from our balcony that stretch from the O2 and the Thames all the way to central London. And we decided to give all of that up for this cold, near derelict house in the middle of a British winter. But on we went. We had a matter of weeks until our lease was up on our flat, so we wanted to tick off as much as possible before we moved in fully. So we got to tackling the easy jobs, like taking down wallpaper and ripping up the flooring. And slowly we started to actually feel like renovators. Whilst all of those little jobs were being completed, we had to start the ball rolling on some of the bigger ones, the biggest internally being a new kitchen and a new bathroom. There was absolutely no way we'd be using the bathroom we'd inherited, so we hired a team to smash it all out, lay new tiles and redo the electrics and plumbing, just so we'd at least have a functioning bathroom to clean ourselves from the inevitable renovation dust. You can see that everything in the bathroom had been ripped out, and this smaller room that once housed the bath and the shower was going to be turned into a separate shower and toilet. It sounds quite confusing, and I probably wouldn't do this again, but I like the idea of having an enclosed toilet separate from the bathroom. bathroom, if that makes sense. But for pure convenience and cost, we kept everything in its place. I wanted the house to feel quite traditional, so in the bathroom we chose a checkered marble floor design, ordered these tiles and then started laying them. We chose oil rubbed bronze fixtures and then decided to panel one of the walls in the bathroom with a water resistant MDF. We then got a roll top bath and a traditional style washstand, and then finished off the bathroom by tiling the shower. We then also decided to change from the Victorian washstand that you would have seen before into this antique basin unit. We found it on eBay and converted it. I often get asked how we cut the marble, and we actually used our kitchen fitter. We thought that instead of cutting the marble and ruining it ourselves, why not hire a kitchen fitter, because they normally cut marble anyway. So he did a really good job and then fitted it into the wall, and I haven't regretted changing it since. As much as I really like this room, I do think it's going to be quite controversial in me saying that this is my least favourite room in the entire house. When we were doing this room, we had to get this done within 4 weeks, and I really just rushed every single choice of this room. We added in pieces that I love, like this antique chest of drawers with a marble top that we've converted into a sink. I really love this vanity, and it was such a good decision to do this. We used to have a Victorian style pedestal that was so piddly, and it just really looked off in this room. And obviously I love the antique wall mirror and the panelling. But if I could redo this room, I definitely would. And depending on if we stay in this house, I definitely think that this room could do with a little bit of a re-renovation. So maybe this will be on the cards, I'm not too sure. But the wall colour in here is a really lovely colour from Paint and Paper Library. It's called Caddy. It's a really lovely soft brown caramel colour that looks really lovely in here. It really opens up the space. One of the design choices that I really don't like anymore, it was a good idea, but it just does not work in this room because it's so small, is I decided to separate the shower and the toilet. I'm very of the mindset that your toilet shouldn't be seen in a bathroom. I basically created these two little sort of caves, one for the shower and one for the toilet, and in hindsight, it's not right for this room. It does work, but it just makes this room feel a bit more confined than it should be. But enough of the bathroom, let's move on to the other major project, which was the kitchen. It's a small space in the grand scheme of things, and as we weren't planning to extend, we decided to rip everything out whilst leaving the layout the same. We ordered our kitchen, and a few weeks later it was installed, and honestly, we were left feeling deeply underwhelmed. 2 reasons for that. The first was the colour. We'd gone for a country cream, which sounded lovely on paper, but in reality it made the room feel bland, and like every other kitchen you've ever seen. The second reason is the design itself. I'll hold my hands up, I wasn't as involved as I should have been, and next time we fit a kitchen, you can bet I'll be there measuring and sketching every detail myself. But this time, our kitchen designer just didn't quite get it right. One side of the kitchen we were relatively happy with, but the other side, we hated it. There were awkward gaps where the cabinets met the worktop, and the whole hearth idea we'd envisioned never really materialised. But we lived with it for a while, until one day we simply had enough and decided we need to change something to make us feel slightly better about all the money we just spent. So I decided to repaint the cabinets. We've always loved traditional kitchens and kept coming back to deep greens, blues and reds. And in the end, we went for a rich plum red shade. Changing the paint colour kept us happy for a while, but eventually it was time to tackle the bit we still couldn't stand, the cupboards over the cooker. Okay, last job of the day. We're taking off all of these handles just because they'd be nice and we want to salvage them. But Dad is trying to remove this from the wall, it's somehow fixed in, and then we're going to take off all of our cupboards and get rid of them. This is one of our more recent projects, and it took us quite a few years to finally pluck up the courage to do it. As I mentioned, we're taking down all of the cupboards above the cooker to give the room a bit more space and make it feel more open. And now with the cupboards down, my dad could finally get to work wiring in the new electrics for the new wall lights. Okay, so this unit here is 155 centimeters, so halfway through, which is marking now. And then we're trying to do the same height as these wall lights. We're gonna pop in the wall lights at this height as well. And then the wall lights I'm gonna choose are gonna sort of arc upwards and then down. So, as you can see, we have now channeled out all of the electrics.
And then Dad's cased it within this metal capping. And we've put this filler on top of it, but we actually bought this from Toolstation. Was it Toolstation? Yesterday. And it's not very good. So I think we're gonna have to get our plasterer back in just so he can skim over these bits. Obviously all the holes in the wall from all the brackets. But Dad's also channeled this one in here. So now we have 2 wall lights and I need to do the fun job of shopping for wall lights now. So yeah, we're gonna get the plaster in, I think this week at some point, just to give this whole thing a fresh coat. And that should be it, I think.
Once we had the wall plastered, we then primed it with a mist coat, and then we were ready to move into the next stage. So let me try and explain what we're going to do.
We're going to be tiling this whole wall with a cream subway tile from Decor. We're going to be adding a long brass rail across it, hanging lots of copper and brass pans, adding lots of little antiques around, styling this room. It's going to be really lovely. Hopefully I'm going to change out this oven for a really beautiful range cooker. We're going to add in some brass lights. There's a lot to do in this room and it's a really exciting space.
Because these tiles were handmade, there was a 10-week lead time on them. So after waiting for what felt like forever, they were finally delivered, which meant it was time to get them up onto the wall.
And here we have the current state of the kitchen. Hopefully it's coming across as nice as it looks in person on camera. But I am absolutely over the moon with how this looks. All of these tiles here are individually handmade tiles from Decor. I don't know if it comes across, but they're all different shades of like a buttery, creamy white. So you get this lovely sheen going across where you can sort of differentiate all the colors. We chose to go with the subway tiles, and then we also chose a border tile. So if anyone wondering, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's 5 high with a border tile. If you're looking to do a similar thing that we have done, we then added a Decor H brass rail across that we're going to hang lots of pots, lots of like decorative objects. I'm going to probably style a little bit with you guys in a second just to sort of give you the vision for what it should look like in the future. And then I chose these 2, didn't realise how big they were, these 2 really lovely solid brass lamps. They're from Soho Lighting Company. Again, I'm really happy with how they also look. I think the reason it looks a bit off balance at the moment, if you're thinking it looks a bit odd, is because the walls and the ceiling haven't yet been painted. You can probably tell from the tester colours on the wall that we're going for a plaster pink colour. I've tested a few from Paint and Paper Library and Little Green, and I think the one I'm leaning towards the most is a colour called Mochi or Mochi. It's like a really subtle, I'd say it's quite a deep pink shade. It looks a bit chocolatey, but I painted this whole section here next to the fridge in the whole tester pot, so it's going all the way up, and it looks really, really lovely with the preference red cabinets. So I think we're going to go with Mochi. It's not the same colour down there, so ignore that colour. But yeah, a few more things to do in here. Obviously to paint the ceiling, to paint all of the walls, all the woodwork. We're going to keep the cabinets the same colour. Chad just restained these surfaces, so they're looking quite good. They might need a second coat, I'm not too sure. And then we also are changing all of the plug sockets in here. Again, we're using plug sockets from Soho Lighting Company. The ones I've opted for are the old brass, just bog standard socket, but they're a really lovely finish. They're really hefty in weight, and I think on here they'll look really, really nice.
All that was left was to get the paint on and bring everything together with the finishing touches. And after years of debating whether to change what we didn't like about our kitchen, it was finally complete, and we couldn't be happier with how it turned out. we're going to go back to the downstairs and work our way through the house, starting with the hallway and our staircase.
So this wall was built by the last people, so it's pretty thin. So that's going to be knocked out, and then we're going to bring the railing back and also clean up these stairs quite a lot. This ugly handrail is going to be gone as well.
I'm actually very thankful that Chad worked from home during this time because I have no footage from this. So we're going to mix up what Chad did record and my voiceover. As he said, you can see that this wall on the right, it was made of wooden planks, wasn't original, and we really wanted to get rid of it to open up the room and bring back the character of the spindles and the handrail and the Victorian style staircase, and that's what we did.
So we've taken the wall off the stairs, which is good. It was really dark and dingy in there, so now you get this natural light from the top as well as the bottom. So that wall's completely gone. What we'll do now is insert a handrail.
So as you can see, the handrail and the spindles are now in situ with the trim going up the side. We decided to keep the bones of the staircase and then add new treads, and then again bring in the traditional elements of the panelling on the side going up the wall, which you can see is starting to happen here.
Stairs nearly done. Panelling is all done. This will just need primed and then painted, but all the way to the door. The skirtings have still to go on, but that'll get done tomorrow. Bit more progress. So the handrail stain has come out really nice. Took about 3 coats to get it that dark, but now pretty much perfect. Of course, the creamy white spindles as well. So this bottom bit's going to be painted as well.
This was quite a straightforward project, and it really has transformed the space. A lot more light comes through into the dining room and into the hallway. It's quite a small Victorian terraced house, so the light really makes a difference. You can see from this video as well that we chose to install a herringbone parquet on the ground floor. This goes through our hallway into our dining room and into the kitchen, which leads us onto our next project, the dining room and the lounge. We'll do these 2 rooms together as they're conjoined. The lounge and the dining room both had no character. My dream was to have 2 working fireplaces, but unfortunately the previous owners had ripped out all of the chimney throughout the whole house, and so it was just too expensive to add it back in. But we knew that we wanted to add 2 faux fireplaces, which eventually would house either an electric or a bioethanol stove. Another thing to mention was that I wanted these rooms slightly separated, so we decided to build a stud wall between the 2 with quite a large opening and no doors. I don't mind open plan spaces, but I didn't want the staircase and the lounge and the dining room to all feel as though they're in the same room. So once the flooring was down, we put the partition wall up and then started on the fireplaces. Once they were plastered, you could finally see the vision coming to life, and after a few coats of paint, it was starting to feel like a home. To finish the lounge off, we decided to add some sisal carpet and also create some bookshelves either side of the fireplace. I decided to take the paint a little darker as I wanted this room to feel cozy and inviting, and this colour captures that perfectly. The only thing left to do in here is to tile the fireplaces and finish off the decorating, but even now it's such a lovely room, especially in winter. I'm going to move on to the main bedroom. This room, again, was one of the first rooms we renovated. I showed you guys at the beginning the process of starting the renovation. We took off the wallpaper, we replastered, put down carpet, and this is what it looked like when the bed went in. I then decided I wanted to add a certain type of panelling behind the bed, and we also took the opportunity to build some wardrobes in the room as well. We kept it all quite plain and simple in a simple shaker style. When I say we did use a carpenter for all of the woodwork in the house, so I don't want anyone to think that I'm a master carpenter, because that could not be further from the truth. The bedroom stayed like this for a couple of years. I had no idea what I wanted to do with it until one day I finally sat down and came up with a plan. Some of you might say this room looks lovely as it did here, but it really just didn't feel like a design space. It was always just the room we moved in first and we lived in during the whole renovation. So after 3 years, we both decided it was time for a change. This is where we are so far. I've painted, I'm not sure if you can see, but I painted the side of the bedroom where the bed is all in the colour that I've chosen, which I don't think I've talked to you guys about. It's a little green colour called Invisible Green. It's gone on the skirting, the walls, and it's going on the ceiling as well, and obviously the ceiling roses. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start to paint the doors
and the good old trusty wardrobe. This wardrobe has always been this colour. We're going to take it the same colour as the wall, and I'm really excited. So without further ado, let's get started, and hopefully I like how it looks. Once the walls were painted, it was time for the finishing touches. In this room, that meant a beautiful antique chandelier we found on eBay. From the start, we'd vowed to bring character back into every room, and chandeliers have become a bit of a theme throughout this house. And this is the finished room. It's definitely one of my favourite transformations that we've ever done in this house. Just reminding you of what the guest bedroom used to look like, I don't have much footage of this room. We renovated it quickly and it sat like this for maybe around 2 years. We didn't really use the room and it was just used as an office, so we didn't really feel that there was a rush to do it. Until recently, when I decided I wanted to wallpaper the room and make it quite a funky space. And I think I achieved that. The wallpaper was from Farrow & Ball. It was actually a collaboration between them and Chateau de Pernon. And this wallpaper was actually found in the linen press of the chateau, which I think is a really cool story, and now it's on my guest bedroom wall. And of course, we can't forget the biggest transformation of all, the exterior of the house. For this, we actually used a team who were incredible. We've referred them to so many people purely because of how affordable they are and how good of a job they do. I'm already preempting how many questions I'm going to get from this, so I will leave their details in the description below, and yeah, couldn't recommend them more highly. I don't have any footage of them removing the render from the front of the house, but we actually got them back to do the rear of the house. And this was the exact same material. Again, it's called Tyrolean, and it was a mixture of paint and cement, and it's actually a lot harder to get off the bricks than Pebbledash, so that's why you're seeing them use a jackhammer to effectively take off the top layer of the brick. They'll go and sand down the bricks, touch them up, and then repoint them. This was one of those jobs that could have easily cost us in the tens of thousands, but actually only cost us somewhere in the region of £3,000. It's still the transformation we get asked about the most, even 4 years later, and for good reason. So if you're thinking about removing render, Pebbledash, or anything similar from your home, I would highly recommend it. How much better does this look? The last part of this renovation story is the garden. If you remember from the beginning, we did have a conservatory that we decided to pull down. Finally, the garden was a blank canvas and I could start designing my dream space. So I took to my notes app and drew the layout that I wanted for this garden. I've always loved formal gardens and I decided to create a type of parterre. So I placed the order for these limestone cobbles, and then soon after, work began on the garden. When the tiling was finished, I could see my vision coming to life, but I quickly decided that after testing this paint colour on the fences, it wasn't really what I was going for. After a lot of plant orders in various shades of whites and purples, the garden finally was transformed from this blank canvas into the garden I've always dreamt of.
When we first bought this house, we didn't really know what we were getting ourselves into. It wasn't the grand, love at first sight kind of purchase, more of a lucky find that just happened to be in the right place at the right time. But over the past 4 years, it's become so much more than a house. Every wall, every bit of woodwork, every slightly wonky corner now feels like ours. We've poured so much of ourselves into bringing back its original character. The cornicing, the fireplaces, the old floors, all of those little details that make a Victorian house feel like a home again. We filled it with antiques and pieces that tell a story, layered in colour and warmth, and tried to create a space that feels timeless rather than trendy. It's been a slow process, full of paint samples, dust, and the occasional questionable decision, but somehow it all came together. What started as a fairly ordinary London terrace has become a home that feels like us in every sense. And that is the story of our 4-year renovation in London. We might have found this house by chance, but 4 years later, we've created a home that feels anything but accidental.